Hello and welcome to Sam Not So Wise. My name is Sam. So, when one has too many books to read, what is the best idea a booktuber can possibly have? Well, that is right. Make that bloody damn huge TBR list even longer with an insane reading challenge, and that is what I am going to do. And it is to do with the SF Masterworks book series. So I love this book series. They pop off the shelf with this very clear yellow to white spine, and they always have some awesome old school art on the front. I find them beautiful and I just really like them. But more importantly, the ones I have read out of this series, I've either really enjoyed them a lot, or they've at least left a lasting impression on me if I didn't necessarily enjoy the book itself. So I want to read them all. So this is what I'm going to talk about in this video. What is the SF Masterworks? I'll talk about that, what the list of books looks like, what the series looks like, and the challenge itself, how many I've read from it already, how many there are, my imminent reads, and kind of just the overall plan. So with much further ado, let's talk about these beautiful books. So what exactly is this SF Masterworks series? It is a selection of science fiction novels and reprints published by the UK-based company Orion Publishing Group. And it was developed to highlight important works within the genre, as well as books that were previously out of print. Therefore, it is a big old mix of the big hitters, the important books and authors within the history of the sci-fi genre, as well as some of those that may go under the radar, and they are starting to incorporate slightly more modern books that are kind of making a splash within the genre as well. So a lot of important works within sci-fi. Now, as someone who hasn't read much in the way of vintage sci-fi, I've read some, but kind of nowhere near compared to a lot of the YouTubers that I watch in the sci-fi world. So I see this series as a wonderful resource to better that and read more vintage sci-fi, more important books in the genre, and find new favorite authors who I may not have even heard of, because there are quite a few of them on this list. Now, there are a number of editions that you can buy within this SF Masterworks series. I only have soft cover ones, and there are numerous versions of the soft cover printings. There are hardcover editions as well, anniversary editions, and kind of slightly more fancy versions available out there as well. Now, a lot of the titles within this series are repeated due to those different printings, and there are now over 300 volumes available in the sci-fi section. Now, I'll get to the amount of unique books there are within the challenge section, because there's something else I need to talk about. But so yeah, most of these are kind of vintage, but there are more modern books. For example, so Professional Revelation Space is now in there, which is a lot more modern compared to, your Dicks and your Wells and all of this kind of stuff. I have read this one. Also, they keep adding new books, so it's going to make the challenge even more challenging as time goes on. So this time next year, there will be 5 more books actually printed, and I think they plan on doing even more. So it's only going to get harder, which is exciting. On top of this, there is also a Fantasy Masterworks series available. Now, they have a lot less books compared to the SF section of the Masterworks, but seeing as I read both sci-fi and history, I am going to add those to my list as well, because apparently I am a crazy person. So now let's talk about what is in these lists. So I went through all of the different editions, finding all of the unique books within both the sci-fi and the fantasy sections of the Masterworks series, and put it all into a spreadsheet so I can keep track of what I've read and what I haven't read. And it comes to a total of 284 unique books. Only 284, that's not much. And I'll give you an idea of kind of what authors are on the list, with some of the ones that are featured more heavily. So, well, firstly, actually, what I'm going to say first is Isaac Asimov, who is one of the most famous vintage sci-fi authors of all time, only has one book, the gods themselves, on there, which I find kind of shocking. And I'm sure if you look at the list, you'll find many that you think should be on there that either are not or only have 1 or 2 books on the list. So maybe they'll change this in the future, but obviously you can't have everything. But anyway, let's go further. Brian Aldiss has 4, a very famous author. Robert Heinlein has 4. I've read 1 of the 4 that are on that list and 1 outside of that list. The Strugatsky brothers have 5. Olaf Stapledon has 5, not read any of him. Roger Zelazny has 5, not read any of him. Jack Vance has 5, not read any of him. Gwyneth Jones has 5. I hadn't heard of this author, which is very interesting, and she has 5 books on there. I'm excited to find out more about her because I want to read more female authors. Tim Powers has 5, which featured on the fantasy section of the list, and I've been hearing a lot about him recently, so I'm very excited to read some of his books at some point in the future. Robert Silverberg has 6. I've read 1 of those. Michael Moorcock has 6. Not read any of those. C.L. Moore has 6. Never heard of that author as well. H.G. Wells has 7. I've read 2 of those. Ursula K. Le Guin has 8. That's not a big surprise. I've read 1 of those, and I am partway through one of the short story collections that is in on the list. Arthur C. Clarke has 10, the first one into the double digits, and guess what? I've not read a single Arthur C. Clarke book. Isn't that absolutely scandalous? And the list's favourite author is Philip K. Dick, who has a total of 14 books on the list. That is a lot of books by Philip K. Dick. They clearly love this author, and I have read 3 of those so far. So before I address the actual challenge itself, I want to talk about 2 little caveats I am implementing for this challenge. So firstly is that I'm not going to make it so I have to own these SF Masterwork copies. I mean, these definitely are a preference for me, but I am very poor, and I'm okay with kind of cheap secondhand copies by other publishers or even an ebook. I'm okay with that. I just want to read the content itself. But if I see these wonderful yellow ones lying around in a secondhand shop or whatever, I am definitely going to be picking them up. So I'm just going to say that it doesn't have to be these. Maybe one day when I'm rich and famous, I can get every single copy and my shelf will be a yellow wall of beauty. The other caveat is that there are other books that I want to read in my life. I have a very long TBR, so these aren't going to be the only books I will be reading. I don't want to focus solely on them, but I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. So how many of the books have I actually read so far? So out of the 284 books, I have read a grand total of 24. That is not many. That means I have 260 books left to read as it stands. So let's say I want to complete this list by the time I'm 50, which is in 15 years. That is 17.3 recurring books a year. Now with the new releases, that will easily rise to 18 a year. So I think with everything else that I want to read around these books, I think that is the target. I think that is an achievable target. So I aim to finish the list by the age of 50. Now, I know that's not particularly exciting for you people watching, but I will keep regular updates on the channel. And it's just something that I want to do for me. I want to read all of the big classics that this company deems necessary to read in their Masterworks series. So I'm going to try and read about 20 a year. Hopefully I can get to more and therefore get through them quicker. And thankfully, a lot of these vintage SF books tend to be shorter, like, I mean, you know, 300 pages or less. I mean, H.G. Wells, he writes tiny books, 14 Philip K. Dick books, and they are all pretty small. Now, there are chunky books on the list as well. I have read one of them at least, The Fire Upon the Deep, which is pretty chunky, but in general, they tend to be smaller, so this is giving me hope that I can get through the list a lot quicker. Now, as for reads that are coming soon, I can tell you about some of the ones that I own already, so you can expect to hear about them in the near future. The first one will be the Isaac Asimov, The Gods Themselves. I'm definitely reading this in August. I am making that a certainty. And the other ones I own physically are Fearsome Engine by Ian M. Banks, the only Ian M. Banks book on the list. And seeing as he is my favourite author, I find that absolutely ridiculous. But, you know, hopefully he'll get some more books on there in the future. I haven't read, this is one of the only ones I haven't read from his, so that's exciting for me. Fever Dream by George R.R. Martin, which was in the fantasy section. I'm looking forward to seeing what Martin does outside of A Song of Ice and Fire. Cat's Cradle by Kurt Vonnegut. This is one of those tiny weeny books. Hoping to get to that soon. Paul Anderson, Tau Zero. Again, just a tiny weeny book. And on my Kindle, I have Rendezvous with Rama, so I can finally break my Clark virginity. Babel 17 by Delaney, and The Forever War by Haldeman. So those are the ones you can expect this year, hopefully. So as for content on the channel to do with these books, what I want to do is kind of do a regular check-in. So every 10 books I read from the list, I will do a tier ranking of those 10 and just keep going forward like that, so we can find out how I'm doing on my journey, and hopefully there'll be a few of those every year, 1 or 2 or 3, depending how the reading is going. And first, therefore, I need to do a tier ranking of the 24 I have already read. So hopefully that will be coming within the next couple of weeks. Now, I need to learn how to do a tier ranking first. If you're not new to the channel, you'll know that I am absolutely crap at tech. So I've got a little bit of research to do, and but I really want to make that video, so I will make it happen. Plus, you will hear about the books in my monthly wrap-ups, and I will do the occasional dedicated review like I do on my channel when I feel like I've got a lot to say about a book, or I think it's worthy of a dedicated review. So that's the plan, tier rankings, and you'll hear about them in my wrap-ups. So that is it for today's video. If you've made it this far, I thank you very, very much. Let me know your thoughts on this challenge. Am I absolutely insane? Should I go a little bit quicker? Should I go a little bit slower? What books from this series do you think I should kind of focus on first? What do you recommend I read first? And otherwise, just have a conversation with me in the comments. I love chatting to you people. I try and answer every comment. So if you liked the video, please like it. If you're new to the channel, please think about subscribing and see how I get on with this crazy challenge. But that is it for today. So I'll see you in another video very soon. Goodbye.